Hello everybody, this is Simon with Let's Play Mega Man Tertium. Only one final challenge remaining, as this is actually the last time we're going to see the stage select screen. The final stage in this game is a giant gauntlet, but I'm going to split it up for your viewing pleasure. Now let's just jump right in and tell Dr. Wily that he really needs to stop doing evil stuff. For this we're colored in Drillman's colors, sad enough we won't see the drill bomb. I was really expecting a giant Susie here. Did you? Hey, that was easy. Stop this instant, even if you're beet red in the face. Now would have been a good time to shoot him in the back of the head, or at least the leg. But no, it's time to meet our Mega Man killer for this game. This is Punk. And it's obviously far more important to chase after him and his cocky attitude than to try and take out Dr. Wily. Very good idea, Mega. Really. And because Punk is a complete show-off, he drills another hole in the ceiling, because why not? Punk is actually not a punk at all, he is quite the hard fight. The problem with him is basically that he deals a shitload of damage whenever he hits you. His basic pattern is pretty simple. He jumps up and shoots 3 times, similar to Metal Man, or 2 to 4 times rather, and then he changes the screen. That changes from one side of the screen to the next. The thing is, while he's doing that, you need to decide if you can jump or slide him. This is a split-second decision, it is just barely enough to be fair and is really hard. And you get his weapon for it. Contrary to the rather shitty Mega Man killer's weapons of Primum and Secundum, this one is actually really good and I look forward to showing it off in the final level. Which is coming up here. Punk's fight was rather quickly over because I really wanted to get it done with, because I'm pretty bad at dodging his side-changing attack, but we're going to see more of him later. This doesn't look quite right. Hey you asshole, I wasn't finished with debriefing the stage. Ah well, going to see about that next time. And about the color scheme, probably. So this was over pretty fast, only a boss fight. The perfect segue into an analysis similar to last time. I talked about difficulty in level design, how surprises are bad, clever enemy combinations are good, stuff like that. For this second batch of levels the same thing applies, but I don't want to go into too many details. The bad example section would get bogged down by the entirety of Dustman's level anyway. So why don't we, after we saw all but one of them, talk about boss fights? As Mega Man games aren't paragons of complexity, boss design is easy to analyze. There are 2 things you have to do in every fight: dodging the boss's attacks and hitting him. Both of these can be split again into categories, reflex-based and pattern-based. The question to discern them is simple. Do I always need to do the same thing to succeed? If yes, there's a pattern. Neither approach is inherently better, as each presents its own problems. It can be very fun trying to figure out a pattern which isn't immediately obvious, or indeed seems like a reflex fight at first glance. And it might not be easy to pull the pattern off, even if it's just a set formula you need to follow. This is why you're watching the Skullman fight. He's heavily patterned as he reacts to what Mega does, but that's really not easy to notice. After you get it, you can make him dance in circles, but it's still not perfect if you manage to get yourself cornered. And this possible variation is what a pattern fight needs, otherwise it becomes boring. A perfect example for that is Top Man from the last game. He always does exactly the same things, and you need to perform the exact same reactions. A terribly boring boss. Maybe a good intro if you need one, but that's not an argument which holds sway for Secundum. A terribly boring game. Reflex-based fights can be frantic, exhilarating, action-packed affairs that keep you on your toes the entire time, far more than a pattern fight can, which is often a more mechanical exercise. The original Shadow Man fight was pretty much that. Would he pull out the blades? Would he slide? Are you ready for either? How high does he jump? Can you get under him if you're cornered? Sadly, the Tertium fight is kinda shit because the screen size makes it an absolute clusterfuck. This makes it simultaneously an example for a bad reflex fight, as there are far too many situations you can't really solve with reflexes, where you can only pray he'll do one thing or the other. It becomes a question of luck more often than not, and this is completely unacceptable. It should go without saying that failing at something through no fault of your own is incredibly frustrating. It doesn't need to be unavoidable damage that will eventually get you killed. In Dustman's example, we're looking at the you hitting the boss side of things. Far too often this asshole will start sucking in air, become invulnerable and staying so for far too long. To add insult to injury, it's a complete non-threat which just wastes your time. If you were too busy dodging, you might not even notice that he's invulnerable, but why not get rid of that in the first place? Long periods of not being able to damage a boss are very rarely fun. This is due to the fact that like a level, a boss fight needs to have a flow to it, a rhythm. The perfect fight would be one where you're constantly entertained because there's always stuff to do, but it's varied enough to not start boring you by repetition. This is why I hate enemies like Up and Down so much. You have to stop dead at every pit and wait for them to do their thing. It's complete flow poison, and it takes me out of the gameplay like an unnecessary and painful romance scene in an action movie does. Actually, this flow concept I keep nagging on about has a clear parallel in movies. It's called pacing there. A level or boss can be slow and methodical, or hectic and adrenaline-filled, if it's consistent through and through, though in the context of an action game like this you'd need to work hard to convince me slow and steady is a good idea. You're watching a flow breaker right now, by the way. Drillman does nothing at all most of the time. Then when he finally decides to show up for longer, you're getting your shit kicked in unfun ways, because he's far too fast and random all of a sudden. To end with a good example, a different Punk fight. Punk is a nice marriage of both boss concepts. He'll always stick to the same pattern, but his attacks require heavy reflexes to dodge. You can probably get his blade phase into a pattern if you try hard enough, but it's plenty doable without that, and trying to sneak in hits without hitting or getting hit by the blades is really rewarding. Oh, and aside from Diveman, the only bosses in this game to actually have a damage output capable of threatening you before you blow them to bits are the original ones. They knew what they were doing with their own creations. In conclusion, it's always a question of fun. Anything works if it's well done. Freedom is a key point, however. Punk works quite well because you don't need to hit him while he attacks, but you totally can. You have a clear shot each cycle, but more if you feel up to it. Slide or jump his crew crushes, do what you feel is better suited to your taste. Dustman will never be fun, because you have zero freedom. Skull, while heavily patterned, is as fun as you want him to be, as long as you know what you're doing. Another can of worms, but I bitched about that enough in my Mega Man 4 Let's Play. For now, I'm looking forward to the final boss, which is much like Punk. It has a simple pattern which is still pretty challenging to work around, and you've got a lot of ways to do it. First phase, at least. See you then. For now, thank you very much for your attention.